Gentlemen, strict guardians of our heritage. That was the anthem of Barbados, the Barbadian anthem, and this is the Barbadian flag. And this is just for those of you who might not be aware of what these symbols are, okay? And we are broadcasting live from Barbados this evening. And it is so important to us that our symbols are showcased and that we acknowledge them. Yes, and so we are excited to be with you this evening, live and direct from Barbados, beautiful Barbados. Good evening, everybody. How are we doing? Tonight we have a very important show. This show tonight, it is so important. This show is as important as any show on the cybercrime bill. Do you remember those shows on the cybercrime bill? So before I even start, we are going to be talking about the government's plans to tap your phone to go straight into your bedroom. The government is deciding that they're going straight into your bedroom to listen to all of your conversations. We want to talk about that. We want to talk about that. We want to talk about our privacy, the privacy of citizens, law-abiding citizens. Are we against wiretapping? No, we're not against wiretapping. We understand that some things that need to be done. But this particular piece of legislation, as they did with the cybercrime bill, we are saying to them, wheel and come again. Go back, take it back to the drawing board. But as a public, as a people who make up the opposition, we are saying we do not accept it. Take it back to the drawing board. That's what's happening tonight. So I want you to go ahead and to like and to share, everybody. Like and share. Very important, because we want this to go out to the 280,000 of Barbadians who make up the opposition in this country. Important. As we did with the cybercrime bill, we are militant and strong tonight, folks. We're joining with a purpose tonight. Yes? Fire, who is it? Fire Jai? Fire Jai. I think that's the name. Fire Jai. He says Bajans complain and comply. They refuse to fight for their rights. Lucinda Allen. Is that true, Barbados? We fought for the concerning the cybercrime bill that has died a death. And what they are doing, I am telling you, they are coming around the corner. What they did, right? They transformed themselves. And they're using the wiretapping to do what the cybercrime bill was not able to do because it died. We left it in the graveyard, Barbados. And they are coming, Lucinda. This one they're coming with to replace the cybercrime bill. Edwin Pilgrim, good evening. Judy Jilks, good evening. Judy, concerning that matter, I will get to you after the show, okay? Yes. Mildred Ben, good evening. Chantel Williams, good evening. Pleasant, good evening. Jefferson Sobers, good evening. Marcia Miller, how are you doing? You militant tonight? Good night, Teroni. We're going to contact you afterwards, Teroni. Yes, Marcia Miller, are you militant, Marcia? If you're militant, let me see the thumbs up. Give me thumbs up, man. Give me thumbs up if you're militant. Owen Hines, good evening. Cedric Strong, good evening. Izzy, how are you doing? Wayne Austin, how are you? Angela Burke. It's wonderful to see you, Marcia and Sharon Innes. Houston Field, Diana Husband, Lori Bob, you militant, Lori? Who militant and strong tonight? Who is telling the government take it back? Who is telling the... Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Judy. Thank you for the compliments. ADG, but listen, don't mind this nice dressing tonight. You know, I know you tell me my outfit look nice. Let me tell you. Listen, don't mind this nice looking, because you see inside we're militant and strong. All right, Judy. ADG, good evening. How are you? Beverly Prescott, good evening. Heathcliff, how are you doing? You're militant and strong? Yes, we are. Of course, we are militant because we're sending it. The same thing that happened with the cybercrime bill, we're sending it back to the drawing board. Go back and fix it. Go back and fix it. And tonight, Heathcliff, guess what? We have a lawyer that's going to come on because, you know, I'm no lawyer. So we have a lawyer who is going to join us, and that is Corey Greenwich. You would have seen him last night, and I think he was on Brass Stacks today. He's going to come on, and like we love to do it, Heathcliff, tonight we're going to go through the bill step by step. Okay, we're going to take the bill, we're going to go through the bill, we're going to break it down for you tonight and show you the areas, yeah, that are infringing on our constitutional rights of privacy. We're going to show that to you, and a lawyer is going to do that for you this evening. And doesn't matter, listen, this is for all Barbadians. It's not about any color, whether it is B, D, pink, or whatever color, whatever. This is about the rights of Barbadians. If we could just get rid of all of that color, you know, and all the names and who is this and who is that, all of us will be affected. Everybody will be affected. It don't matter who you are, you will be affected. Just like with the cybercrime bill. Mystic Angel, Vihoy, guess what we're doing tonight, Vihoy? We're going to sit down and listen to Mr. Thorne, the leader of the opposition, together. And for those of you, you might be watching it and you say, I'm not DLP. Listen, it doesn't matter. We are listening to the leader of the opposition of Barbados. Forget about those titles and colors and all of that. We're listening. We're dealing with this as Barbadians. Can we? Cameron Harding, good evening. Marcia, you're militant? Marcia Militant. Hey, hi, Andrew Jordan. How are you doing? We're militant and strong. Anybody shared it? That's part of what you do when you come on, is share. We are in 4 minutes. We're going to start by showing Mr. Thorne's presentation. But you've got to share. How many people have liked the show yet? You've got to do that. Very, very important. Huh? How many of you have liked the show? You must. It's important. This is too important. They are coming straight into our bedroom. They're listening. The government is planning to tap your phone. And when you hear tonight who they have put over all of this, you will understand why it is that we do not trust the process. This bill, we do not trust this bill at all, because we do not have the proper checks and balances in the bill to ensure that it is going to be done in a balanced way and does not infringe on the rights of the people of Barbados, on our constitutional rights. And that's what I'm talking about. And listen, we are ready to hit the streets next weekend. Get ready. When Mr. Griffith comes on tonight and begins to educate us, and when we finish listening to Mr. Thorne, you're going to see why you need to put on your sneakers again. And we are rolling this back. And listen, we're strong and militant, no smiling, serious as a judge. Yeah. Correct. So, folks, I want to just use to remind those of you. I don't know if Dave can put it up quickly in a minute. This is Dr. Ferdinand's wife, who is in need of surgery. That the surgery is going to be done overseas, and so we're kindly asking for support for her. And Dr. Ferdinand is one of our hosts on the show who does a marvelous job, seriously committed to Barbados. And we want to, as we do as loyal opposition, you know, when one hurts, all of us hurt. And so I don't know if Dave has it up to put it up, but if not, you know that we put it up each night, and some of you have taken the link already. So if Dave doesn't have it, Dave could just signal to me in the chat if we're going to have it. Okay, we have it. And so what we're asking people to do is to just go to GoFundMe, and you're going to look for Aid Julia's Path to Healing and Health, and they're trying to raise $75,000. They have raised over 2,000 US dollars so far. And this is for surgery for Julia, who is Dr. Ferdinand's wife. All right. It says, my name is Ferdinand Nichols, and I'm reaching out on behalf of my wife, Julia Nichols. She has been diagnosed with a critical medical condition which requires a potentially life-saving surgery. Failure to address her condition as a matter of urgency will result in severe life-threatening complications. Regrettably, the equipment to perform this surgery is not available on the island of Barbados. Along with this surgery, there are several other critical health issues that need to be addressed urgently. Right now, the primary focus is getting Julia the medical care she needs as quickly as possible. But as many of you know, the cost of medical care is overwhelming. And so that's why we've come to you tonight to ask you to help Julia. Thank you for those of you who have reached out and you want to help on this. You could go directly to this site and you could pay them the donation directly to this site. You see the button there, the green button that says donate, and right beside it, a darker green button that says share. So that would help them a lot if you share and donate. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Thanks, Dave. And okay, the link is right there. You can copy the link from the chat. Okay. All right. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you, Dave. Thank you so much. At this time, what we're going to do, we're going to listen to the Honorable Ralph Thorne in Parliament. As we said, this is not about Mr. Thorne. It's not about any party. It's about you. It's about me. It's about our privacy. It's about things being done properly, being correctly in this country. And they will stop this show. I am telling you, because all of the sources, all of my sources that I have, people who are scared, folks, huh? People who are scared, Judy and Shirley and Izzy, people who send me things and they're scared because of their jobs. When they tap my phone, they're going to be able to find out every whistleblower, anybody who's telling me anything. They're going to find out who they are. And you know what this government does? It victimizes people. This legislation is to ensure that they remain in power forever. Yes, that's what they're doing. We do not trust them. Let's go ahead and listen to Mr. Thorne. Go right ahead, Dave. Thank you.
Admittedly, this is a speech that I hoped I would not have had to make, although I will confess that I expected that I would have to make it when I observed the trajectory of the government in recent times, its attitude towards the law and to legislation, of course, and its attitude towards the people. As did the learned Attorney General, my major focus will be on the bill that deals with phone tapping, and I agree with him that wiretapping may be misleading, since he may confess now, and he has confessed to the people of Barbados, that they are less interested in old methods and are now more interested in the modern methods of breaching people's right to privacy, which is, as he said, protected by the Constitution. But the learned Attorney General also says to us that today this bill, which intends to be an act, will be an exception to the Constitution pursuant to Section 49, and that not even the Constitution will stop this government from invading against the rights of the citizens to privacy. As always, I like to write notes while listening and preparing the legislation. And the learned Attorney General described what he does today as a bold step. And he says that the legislation now trespasses on an area, I'm reading, sir, my notes, that is, on an area that is sacred and murky. Perhaps it is the first time I've heard those two words put together in a sentence. I don't know how it is sacred and also murky. But if he were to ask the citizens of Barbados to choose one of those words, they would say back to him that it is murky. What the government is doing takes this country into somewhat murky waters. Making my notes further, and this is how I like to begin, by taking note of what was said in the opening speech. The learned Attorney General said that we have accused the government of being soft on crime. And his proof, the honorable member's proof, that the government has not been soft on crime is that the government has passed a large quantity of legislation. Now, the learned Attorney General will be reminded that when we accuse the government of being soft on crime, we are speaking of qualities and not quantities. It is quite possible to pass lots of legislation, but the nature and the depth of that legislation must reveal an intention to arrest criminality. And I don't think the public is yet convinced that the government is serious about any effort to curb crime and to curb violent crime in this country. We normally hear the speeches about the appointment of many judges and making the Department of the Director of Public Prosecutions a lot larger. These days, I don't hear too often the boast about the New Bail Act. That New Bail Act, and I speak about this often, and I'm going to speak about it again today. That New Bail Act was supposed to change a situation in which young men on bail for murder are committing murders while on bail. Now, the Honorable Member for St. Joseph did not produce any statistics, but since that act has been passed, there have been more murders per month and per capita in Barbados. So that when we accuse the government of being soft on crime, we speak to qualities. And when one considers that the murders have continued, and not only continued, but that they have increased, it must be considered that the passage of the New Bail Act has been a failure if its intent was to incarcerate men who had been charged for one murder and to keep them incarcerated. But the situation continues in Barbados where men, according to the evidence, are committing murders, and then it is discovered that they are on bail for murder. If that is not evidence of failure, I don't know what is. But the learned Attorney General comes today and he says that this new legislation, the Interception of Communications Bill, is an arsenal. That's how he describes it, as an arsenal. Now, an arsenal is a place where you keep weapons. And so the language is appropriate because we are going to take the position today that this legislation is a weapon against the people of Barbados. And that is in keeping with government's trajectory, and that is in keeping with government's relationship to the majority of people in this country, that the government has been unfair to the people of Barbados. The government has been treating the majority, who are honest and upright people, and those persons in Barbados now feel under threat. They certainly felt under threat when the government attempted to pass the cybercrime bill. Every day you're hearing people speak of the threat that they feel from government with this tint legislation, and it is not taken lightly. People leave home every morning now wondering if the police officer will stop them, what will be the consequence of being stopped, if they can take the time to go to the technician, so that it is not only money, but it is time, and it is time lost, and it is about productivity, and it is about bringing ruin to your entire day simply because government has somehow, by some perverse logic, associated dark tint on windows with violent crime. They haven't proved yet by any evidence how the government argues that there is a relationship between tint on a car window and violent crime. So that the point is that we agree with the Attorney General that government has an arsenal, not of tools. If it were tools, it would not be an arsenal. An arsenal contains weapons, and the people of Barbados feel that every piece of legislation now, and almost every policy, represents a weapon against the rights and interests of people in Barbados. I've referred to tint, There's the cybercrime bill, which government may be feeling embarrassed, has chosen to hide away for the time being. But that cybercrime bill, people felt that it was a threat to their rights. One of the least among them had said at the time of the bill that it was there to protect ministers. And I don't know if that is the reason government has hidden away the legislation. But you see, there's a trend, there's a trajectory. These pieces of legislation reveal government's propensity to go against the people of Barbados rather than going against the criminal element. So that today is just another one of those weapons being used against the people of Barbados. Now, we all know about the literary character Don Quixote. He used to tilt at windmills. He would see a windmill, and in his imagination, that windmill was a giant, large giant. And he would tell himself, look, I am going to beat that giant. But it was just a windmill. Now, I make that analogy with the Attorney General speaking in relation to the police service. And somehow he manages to reason that there are those in the opposition, certainly, according to him, and others, who want to hobble the police force, the police service, beg your pardon. And that is the tilt, I beg your pardon, not tint. That is the tilt at windmills. That is an argument invented conveniently. Nobody in Barbados wants to hobble the police service. In fact, I correct myself, if there's anybody in Barbados that wants to hobble the police service, it is the government. The government has not been kind to the police service. The government has not been fair to the police service. And indeed, the government has been interfering, and we've said this often, the government has been interfering in the work and the operations of the police service. And we say that based on the evidence. Whether some Good Fridays become Bad Fridays or not, the evidence is there that this government has undermined, hobbled, to use the word of the learned Attorney General, the police service. And when we hear self-congratulation, and I know this is a debate that stretches across all four pieces of legislation today, when we hear self-congratulation about inducting special constables into the police service, I confess that one of the expectations I had today was that I was coming here to hear government applaud itself in relation to the senior constables, men who have served for 20, 30, and 40 years and are still constables, men who received the promise since March last year from this compassionate government that a man who served 20 or 30 or 40 years, and 20 at least, in the service, in the police service, without promotion, that he would have been promoted, and that promotion and consequent increase in salary would have taken place since last year, March 2024. This is August 2025. And it has not happened, so that if anyone has hobbled the police service, it is the government. There are several police officers in this country, in this service, who are in a state of discontent. Not discontent with the people of Barbados, but discontent with the government. And so that is why I said the Attorney General, the learned Attorney General, must now be seen as tilting at windmills in creating this argument about people hobbling a police force, a police service, when the evidence reveals that it is the government that is hobbling the police service. I repeat that I thought I was coming here today to hear that the government was promoting constables of 20 years or more to the status, to the rank of senior constable and increasing their salaries. They were told this, I repeat, for emphasis, they were told this last year, March, on the occasion of the St. James North by-election. And the pun is intended when I say by, in relation to the election. They were promised promotion again, and they were promised that they would have been promoted in May and June and July and August. And I honestly felt that our convergence here today was to formalize the promotion of those gentlemen and ladies who are in the police service. I thought that we were coming here to do that. The promise to them continues to be breached. Who then, Your Honor, is hobbling the police service? I may have made a decision to ignore the comment about the National Advisory, something the government set up, the National Advisory Council on Citizen Security. I raised the point of order on it. I don't know that the country needs to hear any prolonged contest on that. The newspapers recently disclosed to the country that the chairman retired. I don't know how many meetings they've had. The Learned Attorney General comes here today and says to Barbados that they held consultations with the public. I don't know where they held them. I suspect the public does not know where those meetings were held. I saw one photograph of them sitting at a place, it looks like a Laro court. One of them was unable to duck before the camera flash went off. So there he was staring ahead. I am not aware that that advisory council has met. And in those circumstances, the credit of the Attorney General must now stand on slippery ground. To come here today, having ignored the Bar Association, having ignored all of the interest groups in Barbados, and to say that there was consultation with something called a National Advisory Council on Citizen Security, to justify legislation by claiming that you consulted with that body of dubious standing and dubious authority, and one wonders whether it exists at all. And with the departure of the appointed chairperson, I wonder if the Learned Attorney General will tell this Parliament who is the chairperson of that dubious body, which probably does not exist. So that if you try to justify legislation on the basis of consultation with a body which probably does not exist, then that speaks more about the content and the motive behind this legislation than it says anything about the body itself. So that having summarized what the Learned Attorney General said, let us come to the content of our submission today. And tapping people's phones, I'm going to speak in plain language. Tapping people's phones is not a good thing. And there's a space in every person's life, in every person's existence, that is sacred. And I think that's the word the Learned Attorney General used as well. That space that is sacred, it's called privacy. And whether it pertains to a personal relationship, and let us be frank, whether a personal sexual relationship, it could be a relationship with someone at church, at a club, but whatever is contained within that space of privacy, I don't think there's anything in human existence that is cherished more than that space called privacy, even sometimes more than money. Privacy, private relationships, personal relationships. That is indeed sacred and cherished space within one's existence. And a lot of that privacy finds expression by telephone. You are aware, sir, that when people retire, and well, not by experience because you're not retired, nor am I, but we watch our parents when we have them, and they spend a lot of time on the phone. And they do that as an expression of sometimes loneliness. They want to make contact with their friends who are still alive. But that is private space, time spent on a phone. Nobody writes letters these days, and if you write a letter, it is done by WhatsApp. And I'm going to say something about WhatsApp as well, because I can guarantee you, sir, that the overwhelming majority of Barbadians have abandoned the regular line on their cell phone, and they only speak by WhatsApp. And that is a statement in a lack of trust in somebody or some persons, that sacred space called privacy has been breached by some person or some persons. And people in Barbados believe, and I'm saying this to the government, people in Barbados believe that the government is actively involved in tapping telephone calls. People believe that. And it is not to offend, it is not to confront the government with offensive material or offensive statements. But I know the government knows this, because even members of the government have restricted themselves to WhatsApp calls and to WhatsApp messages. Well, it may distress Barbadians today to hear that by this legislation, which expresses a certain tyranny, that the technology is available to decode what we were being told was this thing called encryption. And everybody, in preserving their privacy, in locating themselves in that space called privacy, everyone was very happy to hear about this WhatsApp thing, and it's encrypted, and no one can breach it. Well, today, the people of Barbados will learn, not from me, but the people of Barbados will learn from a government that confesses. And I suspect there will be speeches after this, and I will ask anyone who speaks after me to dare to be honest enough with the people of Barbados and tell them that the technology is available to breach WhatsApp codes, this concept of encryption. And that is distressing, that is dangerous. And the whole discussion becomes very, very serious when we have abandoned regular lines over the last few years, and we have made resort to WhatsApp. And today we hear by any government member who confesses that WhatsApp can be decoded by the order of the government, so that the citizens of this country have lost that sacred space called privacy. And the citizens of this country will now understand that the government intends to do what others say they have been doing for a long time. I'm going to be very brutally frank in here today, because this is a very serious matter. That they will discover that not only have they lost that WhatsApp luxury, but that today's legislation will formalize the government's intrusion into private spaces. And I don't wish to target anyone, but I said it before and I'll say it again. There may yet be another speaker in here today who will confess. Who will confess that he or she uses WhatsApp, and that he or she uses WhatsApp because he or she is afraid of the distinct possibility that he or she is subject to invasion of privacy by the way of telephone calls. This is a very serious thing. We all leave here today, this parliament, and we all leave this parliament, all 30 of us, with the realization that we too may be victims. And I challenge the government and its members here today to deny that any of them, or to deny that all of them use the regular lines 100% of the time. I make bold to say that every member of this government has joined the majority of the citizens in Barbados in abandoning the regular line and in using WhatsApp. And I know that the majority of people in Barbados, the overwhelming majority of people in Barbados, are using WhatsApp. And why are they using WhatsApp? Just like the members of this government who use WhatsApp, they are using it because of a fear, an active and daily fear that their privacy is being invaded. And they have rested on the belief that WhatsApp has been impregnable, that WhatsApp is safe. It distresses me considerably, and it must distress all of us in this country, including members of this government, that the technology is there to expose us, our private lives. Now, the learned Attorney General advised that we can take comfort in the fact that we don't commit any of the crimes listed in this legislation, and that we don't commit any crimes at all. But that is not a consolation. The right to a private space is not conditional on the fact that one does not commit crime. There is no necessary relationship between privacy, between the right to privacy and the absence of crime in one's life. It is a moral space. It is a space to which one is entitled, even without the element of crime existing in one's life. And that is why it is mentioned in the Constitution. And as the learned Attorney General correctly said, that is why it is mentioned in the Constitution. And the Caribbean Court of Justice has said, contrary to earlier legal belief, that it was not justiciable. And all that means is that previously it was felt that you could not go to court to assert your right to privacy. The Caribbean Court of Justice has ruled that you can go to court. Further to the constitutional statement, guarantee of a right to privacy. You can go to court and have your right to privacy enforced. So that is how serious is the right to privacy. That is how serious is the right to pick up your telephone, whether by regular line or WhatsApp, and have a private conversation. And as I've said before, that right exists independent of the possibility that one may be involved in crime. The two are not related. Logically, they're not related. I could take up my phone at any time of day or night, being distant from criminality, and enjoy that right. And that is why the citizens of this country feel so strongly about it. But there's a trend. There's a trend of governmental legislation. There's a trend of governmental intrusion into the lives of people. Cybercrime, tint, and now today becomes an admission of the possibility, and beyond the possibility, the probability that there are people in this country and possibly in this parliament, and I will confess my own belief that my phone has been subject for a long time to invasions against my privacy. The fact that I'm involved in crime doesn't console me. What disturbs me is that private space has been violated. And I'm just another citizen. And there are other citizens out there who are entitled to feel that violation. The realization that on this day in August 2025, there is a facility, or there are facilities, which on a daily or nightly basis is subjecting the people of this country to surveillance. Now, if that surveillance relates to a suspicion that persons may be involved in crime, I think most of us will justify it. I think most of us will justify it, as the learned Attorney General said. We have, by some means, to curb this violence. But one suspects that the activity has moved itself beyond suspicion of involvement in crime, and we come to the issue today that this surveillance relates itself to political activity. That this surveillance relates itself to political opinion, and that this government has an almost pathological preoccupation with seeking to discover where everyone in this country stands politically. That even the right to hold a political opinion, even the right to hold a political opinion puts one at risk. That's the reality in this country. That is the reality. And I'm going to say this, Your Honor. It is my belief, having heard the admission as to cybercrime was, according to one of them, was there to protect ministers, and that is a part of the record now. That cannot be denied. Cybercrime was there to protect ministers, to protect the government. We are not quite sure what Tint is about, except that, again, it is an intrusion. Because if you ask a man to remove his curtains, and removing tint is equivalent to removing curtains on your house, that relates itself to a breach of privacy. And that is a part of the syndrome, the trend of governments in stripping people. Under cybercrime, I strip you of your right in your private circumstances to express yourself. Whether it is on Facebook or WhatsApp, I strip you of that right as a government. Under the Tint legislation, I strip you of your right to be private even in your vehicle. And I said before, the people in Barbados are with me on this, that there has been no proof, widespread proof of a relationship between Tint and violent crime. But here is this trend in which governmental legislation in this place is about stripping people of the right to privacy, and privacy is related to dignity. And when you strip a man or a woman of his or her right to privacy, you have deprived that person of the right to a dignified existence. And then we come to this. And we must feel distressed. We must feel, as a population, the people must now feel endangered. That even, Your Honor, a private conversation is no longer sacred. A private conversation is no longer dignified. A private conversation now become subject to this constant surveillance, and we learn from reading the legislation that this surveillance may continue for up to 120 days, and that 120 days may be renewed. I would think that well within 120 days, you know who the criminals are. And I will never accuse anyone, not even in this parliament, of being involved in crime. But no one whose life connects to crime deserves that kind of treatment. No one. If the police have the evidence, the police service has the evidence, pursue it. And that is this party's position, that we support the power of the police service in conjunction with the high judiciary, and I say the high judiciary, to administer a system of surveillance, even by telephone. But when there is legislative condemnation of political involvement in the process, then we, the citizens of this country, the right-thinking and freedom-loving citizens of this country, must reject the system. And that is where, Your Honor, I come to the legislation itself. This legislation is dangerous. And the dangerous portion of this legislation was largely neglected or ignored this morning in the Learned Attorney General's lengthy submission. The Learned Attorney General spoke as to the process of interception, and I'm not going to repeat it, merely to summarize that we know that by this legislation, and we say this by way of educating the public of Barbados, that there will be 2 authorized officers who will manage, and that is to say actively manage, the process of telephone tapping of telephones. That's the Commissioner of Police and the Director General of an anti-terrorism unit. And that is logical. That makes some sense, because the police and anyone responsible for anti-terrorism, it is logical that they should combine themselves, although there was some question asked as to why of those 2 authorized officers, only the Commissioner of Police would be the one to make the report to this independent monitoring commission. But I think the answer would be that the Commissioner of Police has a lot of resources, human resources at his disposal, and securing reports for submission to a commission would be easier within his grasp. There are a lot of questions that one may ask about the process. It's been dealt with before. I think the public now knows that those 2 officers actively conduct the process of surveillance, phone tapping, and they can do it with a warrant from a high court, or they can do it if they believe that national security is at risk, economic well-being is at risk. It is a judgment that they make. And to be honest, Your Honor, I believe in the principle that you have to have some trust and confidence in your military services. You must have it. For the sake of peace and good order in a country, the citizens must invest trust and confidence in their military forces. If you don't, that is chaos. If you don't believe, if you leave home believing that the society has military protection, which is what the state is about, the integrity of the state is about, the state's sovereign right to exercise military power, that is at the heart of state power. the exercise of military power. And so if you live with the belief that that power, that military power within the state should not exist, then I'm sorry, you live in a place in which you accept anarchy, so that right-thinking citizens normally accept the legitimate place and power and function of a police service and a Barbados Defense Force. And that is something we have to, that is a mindset that we must have confidence and faith in our military services. And so when they exercise judgments, we want to believe that those judgments are well exercised. And we will believe that those judgments are well exercised when they are exercised independently of any influence. When the Prevention of Corruption Bill came to this House, I think about 3 years ago, it was during COVID, we were at the Worthing location. My speech is there. And I said in my speech that the public is developing an abiding distrust in politicians, and that we must do a lot to restore that trust in us as a political group. And I wonder how much we've done to advance public trust in us as politicians. The comments are so cynical, sir. Every day you hear the comments and you begin to wonder if the political pursuit is in vain. Why are you doing this? And if you express that you do it for the good of a country, and for the good of a country which did good by you, a country to which you owe so much, and that you choose to engage in this pursuit for the further advancement of a country that has done so much for you, a small country. And I don't want to resort to cliches, but a country with so little that has managed to do so much for its citizens. And I don't have to go back to the history of this country, sir. This country has done so much good by its citizens. And a lot of that good has been through the political pursuits. I've made that speech before, I need not repeat it today. So much good has been done by this country through the political pursuits. And if trade unionism is political, then trade unions as well have done so much good for this country. And if I look around the 30 human beings who constitute this parliament, that's the evidence. That's the evidence as to how much good this country has done for the majority, because all of us in here, I think, emerge from that majority population which historically has been the disadvantaged part of the population. And yet, there's a crisis in confidence. But some of us persist, Your Honor. Some of us persist. But today is not a good day. If the people of Barbados want to continue to feel invested in our political system, this is not a good day for the political system. This is not a good day for democracy in this country. This is not a good day when people will begin to believe that a government is itself infringing on a sacred right, not merely to suppress criminal activity, but to identify political adversaries. And I have to be honest with you, sir. And this statement is based on history, the history of the emergence of dictatorial regimes. This is how dictatorial regimes are born. I know people will be upset and people will be disappointed. But this must be said. I wasn't sent here today by Dale Carnegie to win friends. I come here to speak the truth, you know. I come here to speak the truth. And it is legislation like this that evidences the birth of dictatorial regimes, when people's private conversations, when people's private opinions cannot be held and cannot be held freely, especially when there are political opinions. This legislation today, according to my submission, sir, travels beyond crime. This legislation travels into the sacred area of political opinion and the right to political opinion and the right to freedom of association and the right to freedom of assembly. Whether it is a church or a political party or trade union, it is a sacred right which must be protected by this government, because the Constitution already says we have that protection. But today, we come to change the Constitution by this legislation. And the reason this government must change the legislation, must change the Constitution, I beg your pardon, is because this government recognizes today that this is an amendment which trespasses on sacred private property. And that sacred private property is called privacy. Your Honor, it is my solemn view and my belief that today's legislation is about a government advancing against the political rights and interests and entitlements of people within this population, whether they intend to vote or not. This legislation has the capacity today and hereafter to identify people, tag them, and target them, either for political favor or political disfavor. This is where we are today. Is it a happy day? Well, let me demonstrate to you, Your Honor, why this is such an unhappy day. We were talking about the process by which you may tap a person's phone, person's telephone, that it is done by the commissioner and the director general who is responsible for anti-terrorism, and they go to the High Court and they receive the High Court's condemnation for the activity. All well and good. But I accuse the learned Attorney General of having conspicuously avoided contact with Part 4 of this legislation. Part 4 of this legislation speaks of an independent monitoring commission. And the public will need to hear what is this independent monitoring commission. I've spoken to the two authorized persons, or the two persons authorized to administer this legislation, and more directly to administer phone tapping, because we need to speak clearly to the people of Barbados that today is the official start of the acknowledgement of something that has been happening in this country for a while. We know that. And if it were not so, high-ranking officials in this country would not have been restricting themselves to WhatsApp, and I'm going to say the other one, to Signal. People are finding all creative means to avoid the traditional means of communication, the traditional modes of communication. And they're doing that, I repeat, because of a fear that government and its surrogates are actively engaged in breaching their right to privacy. This government has come here today to formalize the breaching of that right to privacy, and that right to privacy has been breached for a long, long time in this country. You don't have to be Oinatha, or you don't have to be reminded of Oinatha's voice in relation to something that is suspected. Who wants to get angry with me? Be angry. I have a public responsibility. I have a public moral and political responsibility to justify my presence here. And I don't sit on a cushion of lies. Let the truth set us all free. And so, I repeat, Your Honor, the position we take is that in an environment where crime, to use the Learned Attorney General's words, where crime has become so sophisticated, it must be fought with sophisticated weapons. And maybe, just maybe, phone tapping is a sophisticated weapon against crime. Against crime. And the Commissioner of Police is responsible for crime. And that is why the legislation identifies him as the authorized officer to deal with phone tapping. And they add the Director General for Anti-Terrorism, and we are fine with that. And condonation by the High Court, we are fine with that. But there is no place in this system for a politician. No politician, from the most junior to the most senior, can sit in any position of supervision, of superiority, of administration, when that system is intended to provide surveillance over everyone, including the most senior politician to the most junior. What is the business of a politician in this? There's no business. As I said, Your Honor, we have to trust our military forces. Our military forces will never be perfect. Being humankind, they will never be perfect, but we have to trust our military services. And there are some of us who do. But we cease to trust our military services when they become contaminated by political involvement, political contamination, I say, because there are many politicians whose sole interest is perpetual power. And some politicians believe that you can travel the road to perpetual power only when you suppress freedom and democracy. And this legislation is one of the means by which you may suppress the right of the individual and the right of the collective to freedom of expression, freedom of political opinion, freedom of assembly, freedom of association, all of his freedoms that are acknowledged by the Constitution may be violated by what comes to this Parliament today. The intersection. I want to read the title. Intersection of Communications Bill. I've spoken as to the involvement, the undue involvement of politicians. And that is not a mere speech, because this legislation reflects that it is intended that politicians will continue to be involved in police work. The intersection of communications is a police job. It is there to suppress and to prevent those offenses at the first schedule: murder, treason, trafficking, kidnapping, money laundering, the drugs offenses under the Prevention of Corruption Act, which is an offense pertaining to politicians and public figures. And if the legislation, beg your pardon, sir, aims to prevent offenses among politicians and public figures, how do politicians and public figures become part of the administration of this legislation, of this system? How do they become that? Are there judges in their own cause? That is a breach of the principle of natural justice. A man cannot be a judge in his own cause, and he cannot be a judge for his own cause. A politician must not be present within this system, sir. Must not be. And how dare this legislation At section 25, I believe it is. Yes, section 25 establishes, well, let us say part 4, establishes something called an independent monitoring commission, and the learned Attorney General was suspiciously brief, if not silent, on this portion of the legislation, which begins at page 31. Let the public know that this legislation becomes extremely dangerous. At page 31, part 4. Let me read it, sir. Establishment of Independent Monitoring Commission. Section 25(1). There is established a commission to be known as the Independent Monitoring Commission, and that word independent will become important. What are the functions and powers of the commission? Here are they, sir. At section 26, the commission, and look, I am quoting the sections, Your Honor, because I want the people of Barbados to get hold of this legislation. I want them to read it. It's written in English. The commission shall be responsible generally for the monitoring and supervision of the intersection of communications to ensure that such intersection is conducted in accordance with this act. Do you hear that, sir? The Independent Monitoring Commission is responsible generally for monitoring and supervision of intersection. It means that all intersections, all instances of phone tapping in Barbados will be under the monitoring and the supervision of something called an Independent Monitoring Commission. That sounds good. But it ceases to be good when one considers how that commission is constituted. And this is the section of the act in which the word minister starts to appear. It is my submission, sir, it is my contention, previously and still held, that there is no place in this legislation for a minister. None of us, as I've said, under the Prevention of Corruption debate in this parliament 3 or 4 years ago, whenever it was, none of us can stand or sit beyond public suspicion as to unwholesome involvement. And one by one, we can put our hands up and say, I'm clean. I do not protest my innocence. But whatever we think of ourselves, whatever is our opinion of self, the public is entitled to their beliefs about a system that is quite often in crisis, a crisis of public confidence, loss of public confidence. And if there's that loss of public confidence, and if we want to guarantee to the public that political offices remain free of involvement unwholesomely, then we as politicians, we as political administrators, must have the individual and collective self-confidence to say to the people of Barbados, those are police matters. Let the police deal with it. We have countries, we have democracies in this world. I don't come to praise other democracies, but there's a fairly large democracy in this world in which the head of state, the president, is investigated by a Department of Justice. Now, whatever criticisms are made of that country, that is beautiful democracy. And this is hideous democracy. When politicians leave their perches and decide that they wish to be involved in every institution, every system must have their presence. Is that insecurity or is that fear? Or is that an unwillingness to allow democracy to function in a country. I repeat, there is no place for a politician under this legislation. But yet, here's this creature called an independent monitoring commission which supervises and monitors all instances of phone tapping in this country. And here's a politician involved in the process. And how is that politician involved in the process, Your Honor? The second schedule. I know there's going to be argument about how the judiciary is appointed. The judiciary has many, many tasks. They will tell you that there's political involvement in judicial appointment. But when a person becomes a judge, that person deals with so many cases that do not touch on concern political activity. Wiretapping is specific and it is dangerous. And it must be at every level, even at the level of appointment of an independent monitoring commission, it must be insulated from political involvement and more so political control. Here is how the members of that commission, a small commission of 3 persons, are appointed. Now, it says the 3 commissioners, one of whom is to be a retired judge, the other a member of civil society, and a person nominated by the minister. Now, all three are appointed by the minister in relation not to broad judicial matters from family law back to company law, criminal law. This is a specific activity pertaining to the single activity of phone tapping. Phone tapping, and that phone tapping may extend to every one of the 30 of us who have the privilege and the honor to come in here and describe ourselves as honorable members. We are not above it. We are not above the scrutiny and the surveillance of a system of phone tapping if it is felt that we may be involved in any of the offenses mentioned at Schedule 1. Including corruption. Why then must someone under this act, referred to as a minister, be given the power and the authority to choose those 3 persons? Is that not control? Is that not control? And the control deepens itself when it says that the minister shall determine how much they're paid. That is control. That is control. And we have argued previously, and we will continue to argue, that the president of this Republican state is given the power to appoint 7 senators. Why can't the president be given equal power to appoint 3 members of a commission as serious as this? A commission that goes to the very heart of the democracy that we have known. And I said earlier this year, show me a democracy and I'll show you a tyranny in the making. This is tyranny in the making, Your Honor. This is tyranny in the making, when something as sacred as a telephone call cannot be made with privacy. And that this legislation says that for the period of 120 days, 2 gentlemen or 2 ladies, whoever they are, I don't care who they are, don't care about the gender, that 2 persons shall be given the power to conduct that exercise of surveillance and scrutiny over 120 consecutive days. And a body of 3 persons will supervise them. And that body is appointed by a minister. A minister. And I'm going to say something now that we all must know. Who is the minister? I will let the public guess. I will let the public guess as to the minister or the personage that this legislation allows to be concealed behind the nomenclature minister. We all can guess who it would be within this system that is being established. The point I make, Your Honor, is that this system of phone tapping exists ultimately under the control and the influence of a politician, called in this act a minister. And the public can guess as to which minister it is. I've not come here for personal assault on anyone. I have come to attack a system that infringes against freedom, personal freedom in this country. That is what we must resist. That is what decent people in Barbados must resist. And people in Barbados must extricate themselves out of those cocoons of fear, because it is fear that makes us run to WhatsApp and the other systems of encryption until we discover that encryption can be decoded. The technology that created encryption is now subject to a superior technology that can decode that encryption. So all of us who live within those cocoons of comfort are now cast into the cocoons, back into the other cocoon of fear, where people in this country are justified, perhaps, in their reluctance to express even a political opinion in the privacy of a telephone call. People are whispering. People are avoiding conversations. People are saying, I will say it to you only if I see you. And if I don't see you, I can't say it. That is the country in which we are now existing. How did we get to this point? How did we reach this point of fear? This legislation gives justification to that fear. And you would have thought that a government would have come to this parliament today with legislation to erase that fear and to genuinely target a criminal element by this legislation. Just as we felt that the government would have come here and passed a new bail act that would have prevented recidivistic, murderous acts in this country, and it has failed to do it. Just as we had hoped that a government would not bring a cybercrime bill to criminalize and to impose massive financial fines on people simply for making a meme. And just as we were hoping over the last 3-4 months that government would not carry out a threat to penalize people for having dark windows, privacy again, just as we had those hopes have been defeated today by a government that is insistent and persistent and that continues to show us the road to dictatorship. And if no one in this country believes that we are on the road to dictatorship, read this legislation. Anyone can take offense, political or personal offense. It matters not to me. I read English. And I live in this country. And I know the kinds of conversations I have with people every day. That people are asking for an extrication from an environment which is oppressive. We are not doing well in this country, sir. We are not doing well in this country. And I'm not restricting my argument to our material well-being. There's a spiritual darkness. People feel defeated. People feel a lack of freedom. People feel that there's a need to breathe anew and to breathe afresh. And when we hope that we can breathe anew and breathe afresh, along comes legislation like this. We were so happy when the cybercrime bill was put on the shelf. We were really happy. And apart from being happy, we were hopeful that the think legislation would not come, and up to yesterday the threats are made that they're coming, and that they're coming on September 1st. This one. This is the most dangerous of the three. And so I say to the learned Attorney General, it is not about quantities of legislation. It is about the quality of governmental conduct. The governmental conduct that shows that power must be reserved to this government in this country. And people wonder why I say what I will say now. Governmental discomfort reveals itself in a political environment and a political atmosphere in which you get a sense that government never really settles into office. And I can say to you, sir, that the dominant conversation in this country over the last 3 years, 3.5 now, has not been on developmental issues. It has been on when government will call the next election. That we have found ourselves as a country in a frame of mind in which we wake every day and people are asking, when will the government call the election? Because the people in this country believe that the government is more concerned with an election than it is with the country's welfare. And we live in a system in which the people of this country give the government 5 years. 5 years. And after 3, there's this restlessness, this discomfort, this governmental restlessness. Is it a government that is insecure? Is it a government that is never comfortable with its mandate? Is it a government that feels that it cannot govern and find public acceptance unless there's always that threat of an election looming over people's heads and making them restless and uncomfortable? It's not a good country to live in when there's that level of restlessness. And if the restlessness was never justified, today that restlessness is justified by the presence of this legislation in our lives. And I would hope, Your Honor, that just as the cybercrime bill seems to have disappeared, that this legislation must disappear. And I'm going to ask the people of Barbados to let their voices be heard in resistance to this. Because this is not about the few political parties we have around here. This is about every citizen who owns a cell phone. This is about every citizen who owns a landline telephone. And they number more and more significantly than any political party in this country. But I believe, Your Honor, that government in its quest to control every area of individual expression may now be in a very practical way afraid of who are those persons who oppose the government, whether they do it by way of artistic expression. There are people who create videos, and I think you call them memes. These little videos, which in some countries have won elections, and just maybe this government has no intention to lose an election through social media. And this legislation will become a chance for the government to suppress freedom of expression in private spaces. WhatsApp. If a man or a woman has the power to send out 100 WhatsApp messages, 100 memes, and those 100 people can send to 100 people, that is power. That is political power. And is that the political power of which a government is afraid? And is that the political power that a government intends to snuff out by tapping people's phones and identifying them? And we all know, and the people of this country know, that this government is a government of transactions. And that there are people who express favor, and in exchange, they receive favor. And that is who many of us have become. That political thought and the integrity of political thought now suffers at the anvil of the transaction, the benefit. You can curse a government one day and praise them the next, and it does not disqualify you from receiving a favor. That's happening in Barbados, in broad daylight. And so the cause, the political cause, the philosophical moorings, the political thought in Barbados is not at risk of death because the transaction has become people's mode of survival. It's a vulgar political world. And causes are dying. Causes are dying, sir. And if a cause is alive and it refuses to die, you can kill it with this legislation. You can say to that person, I defy you and I deny you the right to express a political opinion because I'm going to hear you, and hearing you, I will punish you. That is what this legislation is capable of doing. Show me a democracy and I will show you a tyranny in the making. Here is the tyranny revealing itself. Here is a politician having control over surveillance. Here's a politician having control over phone tapping in this country by setting up a commission and calling it an independent commission when the evidence and the structural evidence makes it clear that there's nothing independent about it. And when you have the power to appoint them, you also, by this legislation, reserve unto yourself the right to give them the amount of money that you want to give them as their remuneration. That is control. You're dealing with human beings. And there was a case in which a judge said, men are not angels, and he included women. They're not angels. There's no perfection. But we wish for perfection in our military services. We wish for perfection at the very highest levels of government and governance. And that is why we repose trust and confidence in our high officials. But there are times when our high officials must not make themselves immune from the gaze, from the scrutiny of our military services. And there's only one person in this country. And let me drop the word person and say office. There's only one political office in this country that may be found acceptable in terms of appointment, since the office of president does not engage itself actively except in very, very few cases. But certainly in terms of the appointment of a body, a monitoring and a supervisory body as important as this, the people of this country must now receive the best legal advice that no one except the office of president must appoint this independent monitoring commission. And if it is not given to the office of president, it loses its right to call itself independent. And monies that are voted for this commission under this legislation are voted by this parliament. I say that ought to be amended, and the monies for this commission and for this system ought to be voted within the monies that are voted by this parliament for the police service, and not separately for this system. Again, evidence of parliamentary and political control. Who are we? We're just a parliament of 30 people, 30 fallible human beings, 30 people who must not ask the public to see us or any of us as above a system of scrutinizing telephone calls. It should not happen, but when it has to happen, no one, no member of this parliament and no member of the other place must be seen or must be placed above the system by being given the power to appoint. And we know that in these arrangements, the person who appoints hardly ever loses the right of access to the person whom he appoints. Hardly ever. Hardly ever. Who are these super people? Who is this super minister under this legislation who gives unto himself or herself the right to be involved in the appointment of a 3-person monitoring commission? And this is not about garbage collection or street lighting. This is about invading against a constitutional right to privacy. That is what this is about. This is about the possibility that a man or a woman may sacrifice an entire professional career because of an opinion that he gives. Because people have lost the right to elevation, professional elevation in this country and in many countries because of a political opinion. Show me a democracy and I'll show you a tyranny in the making. This is the evidence today, sir. And this is the evidence of a government that intends to turn the vice grip in suppression of political freedoms in this country. This is evidence of that. No freedom-loving Barbadian can conscientiously today stand and give support to this legislation. It is dangerous, it is sinister, it is sinful, it is immoral. And Barbadians are encouraged to resist it, not by violence, but by righteous thought. And this government must be asked to return with this from whence it came. And in my view, it comes out of the bowels of tyrannical intent, a belief that you must hold a country in the palm of your hand and give dictate indefinitely. And while you intend to give dictate indefinitely, the people of this country say, give us our freedom. Give us our freedom, and we will only have that freedom if this legislation is reversed. The people of this country reverse cybercrime. The people of this country would love to reverse tint. Will this legislation be reversed? Will this legislation be reversed, sir? And if it is not, the very constitution that this legislation infringes today will become subject to even greater infringements. Today, this legislation, this government acknowledges and admits that it infringes against the right to privacy. This government admits that. When will they infringe the right to freedom of association? When will they reverse the right or infringe the right to freedom of expression, political opinion? These are all sacred rights, sir. This legislation today is capable of infringing against all those rights, because those rights, Your Honor, begin with thought. And when thought transfigures itself into speech, and the speaker is identified as being a potential enemy of the government, a government may decide, you being our enemy, must not survive. And that is the reality in a lot of countries. That is the reality in many countries, sir. That many people are imprisoned for their beliefs. Many people are imprisoned for their opinions. Many people are imprisoned for their speech, for their spoken and written speech. That is where we are today. We are on the threshold of that tyranny. We are on the threshold of that dictatorship. Can we and will we as a country take this specter? That is how I describe this legislation. This specter of tyranny. Can we take it seriously? Or will we say, well, it is the government, and the government has the numbers, and the government has the power. And what will we do? Will we endure it? Or will we have the will? Will we have the political will? Will we have the political might to resist this? This is worthy, Your Honor, of resistance. I ask the people of this country to study this legislation, to take it seriously, to consider it for what it is worth, and it is worth nothing except a threat against all of their rights. And to consider that there is no invasion more sinister than an invasion against privacy. We understand that people will get hungry and invade the stores, the supermarkets, and steal. But that is theft of a material product. This represents theft and deprivation of the right to think and the right to turn those thoughts into conversation, and the right of a government to say, if you converse in that way, chances are you'll act in a way that we do not like, and that we will ensure that you will not survive politically. And it can become more dangerous. There are countries in which the government, an autocratic government, an authoritarian government, a despotic or dictatorial government will say, you will not have the right to exist at all. And sometimes they imprison, and sometimes they kill. Is that the road on which we are, sir? We've never seen it before. But the fact that we've never seen it before, Your Honor, does that indicate that we will never see it in this country? We've never seen the kind of crime in this country that we are seeing now. From where did it come? Barbadians are committing that crime. Never used to happen before, but it is happening now. And if that quality of crime can happen now in this country, are we going to have a government that is capable of doing what this legislation portends? And this legislation does not portend well for the people of this country. This is called a cognate debate, and I have no intention of allowing this sinister and dangerous legislation to be hidden away among legislation dealing with jurors and special constables. But a word for the special constables, sir. I have previously been petitioned by special constables for their induction fully into the police service. And today, I am pleased.
Good evening again, ladies and gentlemen. What an amazing time of education for us here on the Marcia Week Show. As you know, we educate, we motivate, we mobilize, we agitate. And tonight is no different. I was taking notes, I was researching some of what I heard the leader of the opposition said to us tonight. And if you're listening to this, when you were listening to this, all you were thinking of is political party and who is doing this and which color and all of that, you've gotten it wrong. You have gotten it wrong. I want to tell you that this is a war on the citizens of Barbados and all of us. Right here on the show tonight, I can tell you because we know when the show is being reported. And right here tonight, I could tell you this show was being reported tonight, fighting it because they do not want the education to happen. How do we fight back? We like the show. It's all about algorithms. So when they report the show that it's making them uncomfortable, or it is a discriminatory, or whatever, it's a hate speech, all of these things they tell you to. What happens is that we fall in the algorithm when you like the show. And this is important. We want to be able to get this message out to as many persons as possible. We don't do ads on the show. This is all about you, right? So I need you to do that now. Now, I hope you are taking notes, because we're not finished yet, guys. We're not done yet. We have coming up to you this evening a Mr. Corey Greenidge. And truthfully, the first I met him was last night on the DLP TV. He was an accountant, or still is an accountant, and and he's now an attorney at law. And believe me, I sent to him last minute to get a bio, because I myself, my husband will tell you, we had a tough time with the electricity being going out all morning. I've been trying to reach this young man since this afternoon, had difficulty. Messages weren't going through. Even now, my phone is not operating, but you and I know what's going on. But we are strong and tough as nails. You hear me? And this is not going to stop us. So I don't have a full bio for you tonight, because it happened like while the show was going on. So Mr. Corey Greenidge is going to join us at this time. Get ready with your pen and paper, or use your phone, whatever you want to do. But take notes. We're going through this bill tonight. I hope you're not tired. Okay, here is Mr. Corey Greenidge. Mr. Corey Greenidge, welcome to the Marcy Week Show.
Thank you very, very much. I'm so happy to join you tonight. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. I heard on the DLP TV last night that you are or were an accountant.
I am an accountant, but I was an accountant for a couple of decades, and then I switched my profession to law. So I went back to law school as an adult, and now I've been at the bar for in excess of 10 years.
Wow. Wow. Well, can I just say that, I mean, the show last night was spectacular, and you did an amazing job in everybody was fantastic. These are all lawyers. I mean, I thought Mr. Thorne and the producers put together a fantastic team of people. But what your the way you responded, it appealed to the average Barbadian. And I think that's why we wanted to reach out to you, because it's important. Before we hit the streets, we love to educate Mr. Greenidge. It's important that our listeners or viewers understand exactly what is happening. What is the bill saying, and what parts of the bill that we have a challenge with? And so tonight, your job is to do that. So without further ado, we're going to go right over to you. You can tell us what sections to go to. Just go ahead and teach.
Certainly, certainly. Let me start from the outset to say that there are any myriad of challenges with this bill, from simple typographical errors to all sorts of things. But I think what is important is that we have to zero into what are the most egregious or the most important things that I think that the citizens of Barbados should be aware of. So I've kind of put them in some categories so that we can understand. I'll make references to the section, but then you will kind of look at it in a broad way so that people can understand, because this is a piece of legislation, and not everyone will understand all of the intricacies that are in the legislation. So I've categorized it in this way. The first thing, and the Honorable Attorney General in the House of Assembly today made a presentation. And part of that presentation is that he identified that the way this bill operates is that the Commissioner of Police
Yes.
can go to the High Court of Barbados and make an application for a warrant that the Commissioner of Police can, what we generally term as wiretapping an individual. The bill does provide for quite a bit of stringent circumstances under which he would have to present to that judge in order to get a warrant. Now, as the opposition leader identified, common sense legislation that is geared towards crime prevention is something that is definitely needed. It's something that is already widespread across Western democracies, the United States, Canada, even our CARICOM neighbors, Jamaica, Trinidad, Guyana, the OECS. So it's not a position where we're saying, no, we don't want wiretapping. What we're saying is that this bill in its current form, and that is very key for the viewers to understand, that the current form of the bill has a lot of challenges. So the first challenge, Ms. Weeks, that you can write is warrantless wiretapping.
Warrantless wiretapping.
Yeah. You can go to section 5, subsection 2.
Section 5, subsection 2.
Yes, it's on.
Okay.
So in section 5, in the first section, the subsection 1 says that wiretapping is illegal. So what the Attorney General presented in the House to this morning is that we have been wiretapping before, but because of a ruling of the CCJ, the Caribbean Court of Justice, which reaffirmed the right of every citizen under the Constitution to the right of privacy, it makes then the infringement of that right, the infringement of privacy, to be illegal. In subsection 2 now, it comes and it gives 2 conditions under which you can conduct wiretapping. So if you go to subsection 2, A, it says it's not illegal if the Commissioner of Police goes to the High Court and obtains a warrant. And subsection 7 and subsection 10 tells you how the Commissioner of Police can obtain a warrant. I want to pause very quickly to say that in the Act, and you will notice that they identify the Commissioner of Police in the Act as an authorized officer. There's one other additional authorized officer in the Act, and that is the Director General of the Anti-Corruption and Anti-Terrorism Agency. So I just want to bookmark that, and I'll come back to explain why I bookmarked that. So in subsection 2 of the 5th section, section 5, subsection 2, it says, yes, they can go and get a warrant, but the authorized person, the Commissioner of Police or the Director General, can effect a wiretapping without a warrant under 4 conditions, and they list the conditions in this section enumerated 1 to 4. The first one is in the interests of national security. The second one is for the prevention or the detection of an offense that is listed in the first schedule. So the first schedule of the Act lists all of the criminal offenses under which wiretapping can be done in order to either prevent or detect that is happening. Everything from murder to treason, and predominantly related to drug offenses and the trafficking of drugs, and firearm offenses and the trafficking of firearms, inclusive also of human trafficking. So the list of offenses is pretty well detailed in the schedule. So it says that the authorized officer, one being the Commissioner of Police and the second being the Director General, can either A, go and get a warrant from the High Court, but in B,
Mr. Greenwich, if I could just ask you exactly what page are you on? I think that will help us a bit.
The legislation, this will be page 9 of the legislation.
Page 9. So we're at page 9. So as you tell us the sections and subsections, if you also say the page, that will help us to be so people can actually see it. So it's page 9. Thank you so much.
Certainly.
Yes.
So on page 9 in section 5, I'll repeat again, just so that, again, I want the audience to be clear. The Commissioner of Police or the Director General can go to the High Court first and get a warrant.
Yes.
And there, in other sections, it describes how you get that warrant. So if your operator can scroll down to section 5, so that's on your screen. So he's at page 9. Perfect. Right there. So section 2A says a communication is intercepted in obedience to a warrant issued by a judge. So that's the first condition under which the Commissioner of Police can go and effect a wiretapping. But B says that he can also have wiretapping. Communications can be intercepted by what they call an authorized officer. And remember that the description of authorized officer only includes 2 persons, the Commissioner of Police, the Director General. But he can effect a wiretapping under 4 conditions. The first one on your screen is in the interest of national security. Second one is for the prevention or detection of an offense that is listed in the first schedule. And I mentioned some of those offenses. The third condition is for the purpose of safeguarding the economic well-being of the state. And the fourth condition is for the purpose of giving effect to the provisions of an international mutual assistance agreement. The first challenge is that these descriptions are very broad. What is safeguarding the economic well-being of the state? That could be anything that the commissioner can come up with.
Right.
What is in the interest of national security? National security is a determination made by the national security minister. So what this section is actually saying is, outside of going and get a warrant, you can effect wiretapping under any of these 4 reasons, any of these 4 conditions. And let me show you how I am very certain about this. And the Attorney General, either purposely or inadvertently, failed to mention to the Parliament this morning that it is not only by warrants. This can be done outside of warrants, what you would determine as an extrajudicial process. They don't have to go to the judiciary. If you read on,
serious?
No, they don't. If you read on here, it says, and any communication so intercepted, so any communication that is intercepted by this authorized person may be used for the purpose of an application under section 7 and 10. Do you know what an application under 7 and 10 is? That is an application for a warrant.
Oh.
So you can get a warrant, or you can go ahead and wiretap, and you can later then use the evidence that you've gathered in your wiretapping to go and get a warrant. You see the carte blanche permission and power that is given to the Commissioner of Police to wiretap anyone for any reason. Now, I want to be clear. When we speak in these terms, it is not about trying to impugn or to come after the character of any sitting Commissioner of Police.
Yes.
Because commissioners of police will change over time. And that is what is key when the public is they're understanding why we are so protesting this piece of legislation. Because it gives the power to the office. And that office may be in the hands of a good man this time around, but maybe in the hands of a bad man next time, or a bad woman for that matter. And what we try to do in any government's responsibility is to fashion the laws of the land that they do not have to rely on whether it's a good man or a bad man. The laws must in of themselves have the built-in protections that even if a bad man is the Commissioner of Police or may be prone to abuse, that he does not have the opportunity to exercise that abuse of power. So these communications now that are extrajudicial, these communications that are without a warrant, they say these communications, as you can read here, your audience can read, shall not be admissible as evidence in criminal proceedings. And that's where the nexus comes. And that's where I was a little disappointed with the presentation of the Attorney General, because he waxed poetic about these warrants that you can go and get and that you have to go to the judge and all that. And that is correct. And that is how it should be. But this legislation in its present form also allows for the Commissioner of Police to effect a wiretapping or an interception of communication, as is in the legislation, without a warrant, use that information to then go and get a warrant. Because if he collects that information without a warrant, the act says it is not admissible in court. You cannot use that to prosecute. So if then he finds a crime or he finds inappropriate activity, he can then go to the judge and say, listen, we did some wiretapping. Here is the evidence of the crime. Give us a warrant so we can go back and get more evidence that will now be admissible in court. That process, the loophole in that process is that without the warrant, you have one functionary, what the law calls a functionary, an administrative functionary, that is the Commissioner of Police, under his own discretion, given the ability and the power to wiretap any citizen of this country. And that should be worrying to the citizens of Barbados. That should very well be worrying. And like I said, that was not part of the Attorney General's presentation this morning. And we have to highlight that to our listeners, to our viewers, to anybody we meet in the street. This legislation gives a carte blanche, blank check to the Commissioner of Police and the Director General of the Anti-Corruption and Anti-Terrorism Agency to effect wiretapping without going to the courts for a warrant. So that is the first area of concern. I'm sorry, I'm not hearing you.
I'm sorry about that. Can we do just a little review of those broad areas? Because as you were speaking, so I remembered I don't know if everybody remembered the cybercrime bill and the broad terms, and we had to send that back. And even in that, they fixed some of it, but some of the challenges are still there. And that's why we went to, all of us came together as a body of citizens, and we went to Washington to complain. So, but I want to just go back over. I think there are 4 broad areas.
Yes, if you scroll back to the
so
bottom.
if we scroll back up right
right
there. Yes. Can you go over them for me?
Certainly. So you have a scenario where the Commissioner of Police, if in his discretion, he thinks that he should wiretap in the interest of national security. Now that sounds like a dubious reason to be able to wiretap, but it is a broad statement. In other words, anything can be in the interest of national security, and that in itself is not generally in the purview of the judiciary. When it comes to national security issues, you would find that the judges or the judiciary would defer to the administration because that is their purview. The administration is able to determine what is a national security issue. And you would find, and our jurisprudence would support that, generally speaking, and their English cases as well, because we're a common law jurisdiction, they're generally speaking, judges tend not to try to wade in to the purview of the administration, into the purview of the government per se, when it comes to national security issues. So that broad category then gives the functionary the ability to affect the wiretapping. And if by chance somebody wanted to oppose that, or if somebody wanted to bring an action saying, no, it should not have been done, national security tends to be something that is a very high bar that the government is able to effect, and the judiciary tends not to weigh in on what national security issues are. The second one is for the prevention or detection of offenses set out in the first schedule. As I identified before, the first schedule of the Act lists or enumerate the offenses that would come under the purview of being able to be wiretapped. You have murder, you have treason, there's arson, and a collection of offenses related to the Firearms Act. So that is the possession, the trafficking, the importation of firearms, and similarly, the importation and trafficking of illicit drugs under the Prevention of Drug Use Act. So the list of offenses themselves is not the issue, but see where the issue comes. If you have the Commissioner of Police suspects that there is a crime or wants to implement a program for the prevention of that crime, Why is it not necessary, or why does he not need to go to the courts to get a warrant? Why? Because the court requires a certain level of evidence, an evidentiary threshold to determine that, yes. So if you want to wiretap John Brown because you think that he has committed one of those offenses, or
Yes.
you think he will commit one of those offenses to the extent that you want to prevent him from committing one of those offenses, you should have to go to the judiciary, go to a judge, and say, here is the evidence why we think that he is involved in this crime activity, this criminal activity, to the extent that you just can't go and just wiretap anyone that you feel like.
Yes.
So I don't see why it opens up a floodgate of activity, and it grants the power to the commissioner not to have to come under judicial scrutiny. And that's the key. You see, when you go to the law courts, it is a separate arm of government. So for your viewers, the arms of government in our democratic system, there is the administration, so that is the prime minister and the cabinet, with all of the ministers and the functionaries within the administration. Then you have the legislature, which are the 30 seats in the House of Parliament plus the 21 seats in the Senate. So that's the legislature, and you have the administration, and the third arm of government is the judiciary. So what a bill like this allows, that if you have a power that has been given to the arm of government, the judiciary acts as a check on the execution of that power. If the commissioner of police wants to use the power that the act gives him, he should have to go to this third arm of government and say, listen, I have this suspicion based on this evidence that John Brown is involved in this criminal activity that is listed in the first schedule. And the judge is able then to scrutinize that evidence and is able to put a judicial ruling over that evidence to say, yes, based on the evidence that you have presented, we think you have reasonable cause and grant you a warrant. That is how you prevent crime. That is how a normal democratic, society operates. What this legislation does is that if the commissioner of police suspects someone, or maybe even not suspect someone, it gives him the power to do it without going into the third arm of government. It gives him the power without the judicial scrutiny, and that opens up itself to abuse. Right?
Yes.
The third reason, as you can see on your screen, and this one, quite frankly, is I would say is almost laughable.
It is.
It says, for the purpose of safeguarding the economic well-being of the state. Any right-thinking Barbadian would immediately ask the question, what is safeguarding the economic well-being of the state? Or what does that mean? So it is an extremely broad category that the commissioner of police and the director general could rely on to justify wiretapping citizens. It gives them a blank check. It's wide open. What does that mean? And I want to point out one small word that is part of the nuance and getting into the weeds of how you read legislation. You see that the Roman numeral 3, for the purpose of safeguarding economic well-being of the state. You see that two-letter word that comes immediately after state, or?
Yeah.
That small two-letter word has an enormous meaning in legal terms, and I'll tell you what it is. When you see the word or, it means that item 1, 2, 3, or 4, that the commissioner of police can rely on any one of those issues. He does not have to have all 4.
Oh, wow.
In the interest of national security, semicolon, for the prevention or detection of offenses set out in the first schedule, for the purpose of safeguarding the economic well-being of the state, or for the purpose of giving effect to the provision of an international mutual assistance agreement. So he can select from any of those 4 items, and he only needs to rely on one to justify a warrantless wiretapping, doing warrantless wiretapping.
Wow. I learned something tonight.
Those 2 letters are so important compared to if or was replaced with and. What the law does, it says you would have to have all four of those things present in order to exercise your
Oh,
power. But those two letters, or, what that says is that you just need to pick one of those four things to justify being able to intercept communications of citizens in Barbados without having going to the judiciary.
wow. Anybody has learned that? I learned that for the first time. That I saw that there and I never, but going on looking at four, and I know I'm slowing you down because we really want to understand it, Mr. Greenwich. I Number three, you saw me laughing because it makes no sense.
It
That
makes
for
no
me
sense.
as a layperson. But look at four for the purpose of giving effect to the provisions of any international mutual assistance agreement. What do you understand by that? I don't want to give my layman's understanding. What does that break it down first? Give us an example of that.
Certainly, certainly. So Barbados, as a sovereign state, can
Yes.
enter into agreements, what we call treaties, international agreements, which allow for the sharing of information in different spheres, I beg your pardon. So, for example, within the sphere of taxes, we are in agreements where the Barbados Revenue Authority can share tax information with the Canadian government or with the US government, because there's a treaty that is established to allow for interagency or inter-sovereign exchange of information for the prevention of money laundering and for the prevention of the avoidance of tax. So that's an example of agreement. Similarly, there exists treaty agreements between countries which allow for the sharing of information for the prevention of crime. So such treaty, if you have a treaty that is entered into with Caribbean states and the United States, and you know that the United States had labeled the Caribbean region a trafficking region for illicit drugs. So there's agreements between the DEA within the American system, the Drug Enforcement Authority, and states within the Caribbean region for the exchange of information, so that if something is happening within one state that has the potential to affect another, you can exchange that information such that you can be part of the prevention of crime. So what this does here is that this says that if, and in simple layman terms, if the United States picks up the phone and calls and say, listen, we understand that some illicit drugs or some criminal activity is suspected of happening within your state, we want to have some information based, we want to have some exchange of information based on the treaty that we have. What this is saying is that if such a request came, that the Commissioner of Police could use the interception of communications to gather that information to share
Okay.
with a government that is part of a treaty. Again,
Understand.
however, the principle around that is quite acceptable, because we know that drugs transshipment of drug move from country to country. So it is important that we partner with our Caribbean neighbors. It is important that we partner with other Western democracies in order to curb and prevent such trafficking of illicit drugs, human trafficking, which has become a quite a difficult circumstance in many of our Caribbean countries, and trafficking of firearms, which is something that is very much in the minds of Barbadians of late. So the idea of this is actually quite appropriate. However, one then has to ask the question, why, if such a request comes, doesn't the Commissioner of Police picks up all of his information, all of his evidence, and head to the law courts to get a warrant? Why does this legislation need to have a situation where the Commissioner of Police or the Director General of the Anti-Corruption and Anti-Terrorism Agency has the power to effect this wiretapping without going to the judiciary?
Yes.
One may say, and you may hear it either in Parliament or even as you go through the discussions, one may hear that, what if it's an emergency? What if they need to do it so that they can catch it? The legislation itself, Ms. Weeks, provides for an emergency application to the court.
Mm-hmm.
Every day there is what in the judiciary is called a duty judge. So even if there is an emergency at 2 a.m., you could wake up that duty judge based on the evidence, and you should be able to get duty judge
Emergency.
hear your evidence and get an emergency application. The legislation also provides that even if you can't do, in effect, all of the paperwork, all of the affidavit evidence and all the paperwork, the legislation provides that if you have to do an emergency application, the judge is willing to hear oral applications and then can grant you the warrant simply from your oral application, and then give you 72 hours for your officers to gather all of the paperwork to come back to the judge. So there is no reason that I can find, and I don't know if your viewers will agree with me, or if you yourself would understand, there is no reason that I can find that this legislation should give to the Commission of Police the permission to intercept communications of the citizens of Barbados without a warrant.
Without a warrant. And that is you know, what I love about what you're saying is that it's not that it's not needed, but it's the way it is drafted. And if we remember the Child Protection Bill, you remember that? And you remember all of these bills, majority of them are very, very broad, and that's where we have the problem. But I just, before we move on from this, in number 2, it talks about that section there with all of this is the first schedule, and one of the items mentioned there is treason. And that stood out to me when I listened to the program today, sir, because I remember, I don't know if the others remember, I think Rose Corbin, if she's listening, she would remember that it was said by a member of government that a lot of what we are doing here on this show and what others are doing on their social media should be considered as treason. I remember us having that discussion, and I want us to remember that was used, and the word anarchy was used, and disrupting the country. And so you know, I don't know what, I'm just causing us to remember. If you remember, and I will find those clips and bring them on the show again. But it was said that there's some of what we were doing was treasonous. Anybody remember that? I just want you to remember that, okay? But go ahead, sir.
Excellent. And again, remember, the term treason is a legal term that is within legislation. So you can't just you couldn't banter around the word treason and expect to get the type of judicial response that is just, it's a very specific thing. So imagine if the Commission of Police thought that someone who may have a show like yourself, I won't identify you, but someone who may have a show like yourself or is exercising their right to free speech is treasonous. What this legislation says is that he can wiretap without a warrant, as opposed to having to go to a judge who then has the skill set and has the authority to review, in fact, whether or not what is happening is something treasonous. And that's why the judiciary is so important this week.
Yes.
In a legislation like this, the judiciary is the guardrail. That is the man standing at the gate to protect the rights of the citizens. That is the arm of government that we rely on within democratic societies to ensure, to keep the administration in check and to ensure that the citizens' rights are protected. I want to go back, and I think we may have missed this as an introductory point.
What page are you on? What page?
I'm going to take you all the way back to the same page 9, but have your producer go to the top of page 9.
Page 9, yes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It says, notwithstanding in this act shall be construed as being a derogation from section 11B and C of the Constitution. I just want to zero in on this 11B of the Constitution such that your viewers and your listeners understand the importance of what we are doing here by sounding our voices, by trying to educate the masses, educate the citizenry.
Yes, sir.
11B of our Constitution is the section of the Bill of Rights of our Constitution that grants to every citizen in Barbados the right, I say, to privacy.
Mm.
Privacy is a right that the Constitution gives to every citizen. This bill recognizes that that right can be restricted. So that's what this is the very start of the bill. So it's admitting basically that the right to privacy can be restricted. I want your viewers to be very clear. That in itself is not a problem. And I'll draw an example. One of the rights within the Constitution is the right to the freedom of movement, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you take your minds back to early 2020, when the COVID pandemic came, you would have noticed that the Attorney General would have to consistently pass bills in Parliament in
Yes.
order to institute curfews. That bill, that legal instrument, basically removed or restricted the right of the freedom of movement. So that bill says between a certain time you had to be in the confines of your home. You could not move around the country freely. So I'm drawing that example so that your readers and your listeners understand that in the Constitution, there are rights that are given to the citizenry. But the government or the legislature, in their own understanding, can restrict those rights based on the national interest.
Yes.
So there's always a balancing act between the individual right of the citizen and the national interest. So during the COVID time, the national interest then would have been health and safety. It would have been because we had a pandemic. You wanted to reduce the incidences of sickness and death. So there was a clear national interest, which would have been the undergirding of a law that restricted the right to the freedom of movement. So then come to this legislation. What this legislation purports to do is to restrict the right of privacy based on the national interest. You see the comparison?
Yes.
The national interest in this incident is the prevention of crime. And any Barbadian who has not been living under a rock would understand that we are now in a season where crime has reached, I believe, all-time high in Barbados. We're not accustomed to this level of crime, and not just crime in pockets of the society that we dare not traverse. You're talking about crime at the gas stations, in barbershops, in the food court at Sheraton Center.
Yeah.
Shooting down the streets. People are, you understand, on the basketball courts. So we are all fully aware of the situation of crime. So there is a national interest that we want to protect as well, and that is crime. Our challenge to the bill, however, is that when you institute a piece of legislation that seeks to restrict the right that is given in the Constitution, that piece of legislation must be so soberly crafted and must be so thoughtfully laid out to the extent that it does not leave any loopholes for abuse of power. Because when you give the power to the administration to restrict a right, there must be strict guardrails such that from administration to administration, the citizens do not have to worry that those rights are being abused. And this is what the opposition leader was emphasizing on the floor of Parliament. We should not be in a society where we are worried about picking up our telephones and talking about our private matters. All of us as individuals have private matters that we only talk about with our husbands or our wives, private matters that we only talk about with our business partners, private matters that we only discuss with our children. Do you understand the extent to which privacy is something that we enjoy and we don't really think about? And therefore, you have a scenario where you have a piece of legislation that legalizes the ability for a functionary, legalizes the ability for the commissioner of police to take away your privacy. In the national interest, yes. So you will see on the show last night, we emphasize, we are not necessarily saying that the national interest and the prevention and the detection of crime is not something that should take place. The Attorney General on the floor of Parliament today was very correct in that we should be able to give the police the tools in order to fight crime and to even get ahead of crime. Totally agree. And if that is the case, then what the responsibility of the administration, where this is where we think the administration is falling down in their responsibility, derelict, quite frankly, is that you have to balance the national interest with the individual interest. And the way to do that is that when you craft a piece of legislation, you have to ensure that all of the guardrails are in place. And the guardrail in the first instance is your judiciary. The
Judiciary,
judiciary
yes.
must be the gatekeeper. And if you put in this legislation the opportunity for the Commissioner of Police or the Director General of the Anti-Corruption and Anti-Terrorism Agency, if you put in this legislation those two men, those two functionaries, to be able to carry out the interception of your communication without reporting to the scrutiny of the judiciary, that is where the gaping loophole is, and that is where the fear that the citizens should fear as it relates to their rights to privacy. And I
Yes.
think that your listeners need to really understand. I want to make one final point here on this. While I joined the show this afternoon, Brass Tacks with Mr. David Ellis, I joined that show this afternoon, and I had a caller came in, and I won't be able to quote him verbatim, but he made the comment that he thought that we were raising an alarm simply to score political points, I believe was the phrase he used. And I want to go back to his comment now to make this point. This is not about political expedience. This is about me. This is about you, Miss Weeks. This is about every single listener, their family. This is about a Barbadian way of life that we have become accustomed to. We are not in a police state. We are in a free democratic society. And raising the alarm has nothing to do with political points. It has to do with educating the masses, educating the citizens of Barbados when something is afoot that can have a real life implication on their lives and their well-being. It is not about partisan politics. There will be time for partisan politics, I promise you. There will be time for heavy criticism of this government, but I do not believe that time is now. This is about recognizing that there might be one government in today and there may be another government in tomorrow. Today, you may be the one doing the abuse, and tomorrow, you may be the subject of the abuse. So this is about protecting every single citizen in Barbados. So I just wanted to make that point because I find that what is happening in this very tribal and political environment is that persons are happy to reside back into their colors and into their echo chambers and don't want to listen because I am not a B or I'm not a D. I promise you, it affects every D, it affects every B, and every letter in between. This is about understanding about your fundamental rights your fundamental rights as a citizen of Barbados.
Yeah. Very well said. Very well said, sir. And this is we thought that this would be so important for us to see it because people are going to keep, sharing this, guys. Remember, we keep share it out to your WhatsApp groups while we can. Share it out, guys. To everybody. This is education. We know we're going to hit the streets. I will be able to tell you when that will be. I'm sure it's by next weekend. We need to get out there Saturday and Sunday, probably. One is going to be a march, the next roadside parliament. Either we're going to do the two on one day or one on Saturday and one Sunday, but we must. It's so important. We only have Mr. Thorne inside that, as you saw today in Parliament. We do have the two senators. We cannot ask them to do all of that alone. It's not possible. The bill is going to get passed, folks. We need us. We need Mr. Greenwich on outside to educate. We need to use our platforms. Use your social media. Use whatever you have. Use WhatsApp while you can. Use anything and use your churches anywhere that people gather and you could educate them on this. educate them on what this is all about. Continue, sir. I know there are other areas that you want to. Oh boy, we're okay. We have 29 minutes.
Certainly, I will be as quick as I can. I want your listeners to remember one watchword. It is guardrails. Guardrails. There must be guardrails in place. We've dealt with the guardrail of the judiciary and how Section 5.2 bypassed that guardrail.
Yes.
The next guardrail for your producer is on page 31, and that will be Section 25 of the Act.
Page, what's the page again?
31.
Page 31. Yes, sir.
Yes. If you could scroll down just slightly to Section 25. Yes.
Folks, are you taking notes? Please make sure we're going to go this over on Sunday. We're going to stay on this, people. Yes, go ahead, sir.
So here you have, as it's headed up, the Independent Monitoring Commission. And the opposition leader this afternoon on the floor of Parliament, he spoke very eloquently and he hammered home this area. So I just want to zero in on this as a second guardrail. As I said, there are a lot of other things within the Act. We can't deal with everything, but I think these are the major things, the major things that I think we need to walk away from your show tonight. Now, the Act provides for an independent monitoring commission. This independent monitoring commission, they come in now at the tail end of this process. So you have the Commissioner of Police and you have the Director General. They're at the forefront. So they are the law enforcement agencies. They suspect some kind of criminal activity. A, they could go and get a warrant, as they should. Or B, they could forget the warrant and go, and if there's national security, all those broad categories, go and do it, and then maybe come back and get a warrant. So there's that breakdown of the first guardrail, which is the judiciary, which we dealt with. At the tail end now of the process is this independent monitoring commission. How this works is that the legislation provides that this monitoring commission is in effect like an auditor that comes afterwards to examine what you have done, and they have the power, if they see in examining what you have done over the annual period, they have the power to go and investigate. The legislation provides that the Commissioner of Police must annually present a report to the Independent Commission. And in that report, he must give the statistics and give detail of all of the wiretapping or all of the interception activity that they have conducted for the year.
I have a question, though.
Certainly.
The Independent Monitoring Commission is made up of the Commissioner of Police and the Director General?
No, this is a separate body. So I'll get to the makeup in a moment, but I just wanted to give the audience the understanding of how they function within the system.
I understand. Okay.
I'll get to the makeup in a moment.
Okay,
So
thanks.
this commission gets the report from the commissioner. Now, a very curious thing that I want you to write down is that while the commissioner and the director general are categorized in the first instance together, if you remember in Section 5, they were categorized as the authorized officers. When it comes to reporting, the legislation only provides or only mandates that the Commissioner of Police gives a report. It's a very curious thing, because here now you have one of those functionaries does not have to even report. So even before we get to what may be wrong with this guardrail, the Director General is not named as having to give a report. So he is off somewhere out in the ether doing what he likes, not having to go to the judiciary, can effect wiretapping and does not have to report on it. So he hit that post now becomes an island unto itself that can do anything. And one of the points that the opposition leader made in Parliament and on the program last night is that Director General is appointed by a minister, is a political appointment. So you have a political
appointment. So the Director General is a political appointee.
Yes, he is. And he can affect.
And he does not report. He does not have to give that formal report to the Independent Monitor Commission, which is supposed to be the guardrail.
Correct.
Interesting.
Interesting.
Guys, you're seeing that? I'm pausing because I want us to catch that, folks. Catch that. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. So and I thought it a curious thing because when a legislation takes time to group individuals or two individuals, that means that as the legislation continues, chances are you're going to see that grouping. So that grouping of authorized officer, one would think that when it comes to the reporting, the authorized officer would report, which means the
Correct.
commissioner has to report and the director general has to report. But when it came to the reporting, it's only the commissioner that has to report. Now let's talk about the composition of the commission and why this guardrail, while it's here, why I believe this guardrail fails to do what it's supposed to do. For that, you will need to go to page 41. So just
page 41.
41. Just have your producer go to 41.
Take the page numbers, guys, so that you can go do this review on your own, okay? Page 41. Go ahead, sir.
Now, this schedule, it outlines the composition and all of the powers of the independent monitoring commission. Independent. It says that this independent monitoring commission shall comprise of 3 members, as you can see here on your screen. One is a retired judge. The second member is someone who is a member of civil society. Again, very broad category. Now you are charging this commission, this 3-man commission, with the responsibility to safeguard the rights of all the citizens of this country. And the selection of this member of this committee is simply a member of civil society. In other words, one would imagine that you would be very specific in terms of the credentials that member has to bring to
That's a very good point there.
In order to exercise that function. Thirdly, and I want to point out again, just to, you see, you have your semicolon, and you have the word and. You see, remember you could have or you could have and, which means it has to be all of those persons. So that's just a little legislative.
Yes, I see it now. I see what you're saying. I see it. I'm catching it.
I'm sure the next time you look at a piece of legislation, you see the word or, you're going to remember.
Yes, sir.
So you have a retired judge. Perfectly reasonable. Why?
Yes, makes sense.
He would have had a storied career of being a jurist with experience in the operation of reviewing and investigation. But then you have this member of civil society, anybody, that could be anybody. And then thirdly, if the member of civil society was not bad enough, you simply have a person nominated by the minister. A person.
Sorry.
Anybody.
Sorry, Mr. Greenwich, I'm laughing out loud in class. Don't put me at the back of the class.
I'll try not.
This is hilarious. Know that because I read it this evening. Honestly, I read it this evening. But now that you're here giving us the illumination, I could see why you're saying that they need to take this back, carry it back, because this don't make no sense. A member, it can be any member of civil society, and a person.
A person, just a person, as long as it's not of the canine persuasion or the feline persuasion, it qualifies. So just a person, anybody. And you have now, this legislation has a guardrail. Not actually, it's more of a stopgap. So I consider the judiciary to be a guardrail, but this is a stopgap now at the end of the process that's supposed to be able to give you the final check. Let me see what you have done. And if you've not done the right thing, we are going to investigate. And it's any person. You don't bring them with any proper qualifications. And not just a person, Ms. Weeks, a person nominated by the minister.
The minister. And now we go. But listen, I want to go back to B because I have a question, teacher. So a member of the civil society. So who will choose that member of civil society?
If your producer would just scroll down just a little bit.
I'm going ahead of the class.
You're going down. You're going ahead, but
No,
I
no,
love.
no.
I
Okay.
don't mind an enthusiastic student. That you will get full points for participation.
I love it.
And again, to your listeners, we smile because not because it's funny. We are smiling because it is ridiculous. I want to emphasize that it is the ridiculousness that this government has brought this piece of legislation that has such serious implications and have not done what it needs to do in order to safeguard its citizens. It begs to a scant disregard for the individuals in our society. And I don't want to get too passionate. I want to just stick to the facts. If you scroll down a little, if your producer could just scroll down to section 2, just so I can answer this eager student's question, just scroll a little more. It says the commissioners shall be appointed by the minister. So all three are appointed by the minister. All three.
All three.
All three.
That's what Mr. Thorne was saying tonight.
That is what Mr. Thorne.
Oh my goodness. All three. Folks, you see that the retired judge, right, Dave? All three, the retired judge and the member of civil society. Any member, we don't know, they don't have to be qualified. It just says a member. Okay. Correct. And a person nominated by the minister, a person.
That's correct.
So the member of civil society, not a person. Anyway, a person nominated. So it's all by the minister.
Correct. And this is why
all politically appointed then.
All politically appointed. And this is why this stopgap fails the smell test. If you're going to have a commission that is the final arbiter of what is proper or what has been done under this act, that arbiter, that grouping of people must in fact be independent. You cannot say that a minister in their discretion, their only purview, gets to appoint these people and then call them independent. That doesn't pass the smell test. On top of that, the minister is able to determine the salary of each of these individuals. It says that.
Yes.
Able to determine the salary. If you go to page 42, at the very top of page 42, the next page.
Page 42.
Next page, there you go. The commissioners shall receive such remuneration as the minister determines.
Wow.
And if you understand how guardrails work, what you want to do, if there's somebody that's truly going to be independent, that is going to exercise a function that may rub the administration the wrong way. Remember, if these guys are going in and investigating the police and investigating the director general, they must have teeth. They must have some level of protection themselves. If the commissioner's salary is determined by the minister, how can they be independent? Because you're basically saying your paper is determined by me. So if I say to you, no, don't touch John Brown, no, I don't want you to investigate here, you can't be independent.
Oh my God. No, people, pause there, teacher. Let me get into another mode. The student, your student has, received the information. And let me just say something to the viewers. Folks, are we going to sit by and allow this political piece of, I don't even know, I don't want to use a word that is coming into my mind, to pass? Are we going to sit down and allow this political, this thing here? I'm trying to get a word that makes sense and that's right to say on the program. We are going to sit down in Barbados and allow this to pass and allow this to be made into law in Barbados. As far as I'm concerned, this is worse than the cybercrime bill. Now I understand what Mr. Thorne is saying. This is worse than the cybercrime bill. So they didn't get their way with that. So this is what they're coming with. This is, oh my goodness. Over to you, teacher. Go ahead.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think we are at an inflection point in our society where the Barbadian people must allow their voices to be heard. The Barbadian people must understand the danger that is ahead. The responsibility of persons who are given the legal right to intercept your communication. It is very critical to understand how that communication is how that ability to intercept that communication is effective. It should and must and has to be under the scrutiny of the judiciary. It must come under the smell test. There must be evidentiary thresholds that are crossed in order to say, yes, you can go and wiretap and intercept communication. And if we haven't said it before, remember, if John Brown is going to be wiretapped or his communications are going to be intercepted, John Brown is not going to know. Even the application to the judiciary is by what we call an ex parte application. It means that John Brown is a party to that application, but we exclude him in the application. So that's why it's called ex parte. We exclude one of the parties to that application. So we then are sitting in, I'm not really one that's prone to hyperbole, but we are literally fish in a bowl at the whim and fancy of the Commissioner of Police and the Director General of the Anti-Corruption and Anti-Terrorism Agency. And then
by the minister.
All by the minister. And then while the legislation now comes and say, oh, no, we have a commission that is independent, that is going to look after your rights. But then that commission is a farce because it's appointed by the same minister, and there are no proper qualifications that commission had. If I were to opine and give a suggestion, first thing first, the retired judge, definitely, he has judicial experience, but the retired judge should be the chairman. If you look on your screen, it says the chairman shall be chosen from among the number of commissioners. So you see that random person in civil society, and you see that random political appointee, they could be the chairman of that commission. Which means that they
not the retired judge who would have the experience.
Who would have the experience. This legislation is deeply flawed, and you have an attorney general that stood up for more than 3-4 hours in the House of Parliament today to present this to the Barbadian people under the guise of some kind of binary choice. Oh, don't criticize us. You want the police to do their jobs. You either want them to do their jobs or you want to criticize, but you can't have it both ways. No, sir. We have a right to dive into this piece of legislation and to give our opinion and ask questions and agitate when we don't understand. And when we discover that there are things wrong with it, we have a right to go to our government and say, listen, something is wrong with this legislation. We are not comfortable, and have the government respond accordingly. You cannot have a government that is only about themselves and not about the people. You have a situation where the chairman of that committee, that commission, could be anybody, anyone. So it's incumbent upon us to make sure that the citizens understand what's happening here in Barbados. Understand that you have a piece of legislation that's flawed at every turn. If I were to make a suggestion as it relates to the composition of this commission, yes, a retired judge, and I would insist that the retired judge be the chairman of the commission. He will be the one that has judicial experience and will be able to chair a sitting panel. I would then suggest that one of the members of the commission should or could be what is a retired law enforcement officer, either from the defense force or from the police service, that have reached the rank of either assistant or deputy commissioner, or have reached the rank of captain in the Navy or I can't remember the rank of the yes, colonel in the army or captain in the navy or higher. So what you then have, because it is a criminal, it's within the
Yes.
criminal sphere, you want now my guardrails to be able to recognize when there's impropriety. Those persons now will be able to recognize if the present commissioner has done something that he should not, because they would have the experience. And then if I were to recommend a third commissioner, it would be a senior minister of religion. And I'll tell you why.
A senior minister of religion.
Religion, yes. And I'll tell you why. Because you have now, this is not just something that exists within the domain of the administration. You want a moral element to be in this. You want eyes of persons who can say, listen, this is not right. Because everything that is expedient is not necessarily right. So that
Yes.
was my suggestions. Because we're not just here to criticize. We want to make sure that we make suggestions. And as the opposition leader clearly pointed out on the House of Parliament this afternoon, this commission cannot, must not, should not be appointed by any political operative, any political minister. This commission should be appointed by the head of state. And our constitution provides for a way in which the president can appoint a commission. Our constitution says the president can exercise her discretion. It takes it out of the arm of a sitting administration and puts it in the arm of the head of state, such that it creates that independence. It creates that ability to have the citizenry be confident that these persons are independent. As it relates to the remuneration, if I were to make a suggestion, you have a scenario where you can set up a fund, a sinking fund that is then invested and can can be funded by the income from the investment. Similar to the Court of Justice, the Caribbean Court of Justice, when it came together, all of the governments of the Caribbean had to deposit a certain amount of money into an investment fund, and that investment fund is then invested into the world market, and it earns interest, and that interest is what funds the Caribbean Court of Justice. That structure allows that the Caribbean Court of Justice, so in other words, the governments don't have to pay the Caribbean Court of Justice. The governments don't have to pay the salaries of the judges, and therefore, when a case from Barbados comes to the judge, they don't have to worry about funding of the court in their ruling. It isolates them from the government. Similarly, this commission, you can set up a fund, so the government, the parliament could pass legislation to put a sinking fund such that this commission could be funded outside of the purview of the minister. So this idea that the minister determines remuneration will be taken away, and therefore you have a commission that then can be truly independent and act as that final backstop to the possible infringement of the rights of the citizens. So there are ways, we're not just criticizing, there are ways that we can institute proper guardrails, proper measures to ensure that we protect the rights of the citizens.
But let me ask you something, Mr. Greenwich, and I just want to thank you. I know we just have 6 more minutes, but if there are other areas, I want to ask you and your family, your wife, if you're married, if they can let you come back, give you the time to come back on another night. This is serious for us. We need to understand what we're doing, sir. But I want to ask you, as we close this part of everything, that minister, who could it be? Because you have different types of ministers. And I was saying to someone this evening, who could it really be? Could it be the Minister of Home Affairs who would deal with this? Or the Minister of Defense? I don't think it's finance. I don't think it's economic affairs. I don't think it will be tourism. What seeing that they just said minister, which again is very vague language. Can you, what kind of ministers you think would, or which minister you think would be responsible here?
So I could ask your producer, you can go to page 7.
Page 7.
And I'll answer your question.
Page 7. Yeah, we're going to get to page 7. Folks,
Beautiful.
as somebody said, this is a master class tonight. They are doing all they can so that we are down in the algorithm. When this is over, you share this as many times as possible. They are not going to win. They are not going to win. And this is so terrible. We're trying to educate ourselves, and they're still fighting us against that education. Yes, go right ahead, sir.
So as you can see there on your screen, there's a definition of minister just at the bottom of your screen. It says, means the minister responsible for interception of communication. When I first read that, I thought to myself, that's an interesting way of defining it. Because usually, if you look through any piece of legislation, it usually gives you a minister or ministry that is already established, right? So it would tell you, like, for example, if you were to open the legislation that governs the financial services, it will tell you it may be the Minister of Finance. So it would specify a minister or ministry that is in existence. This is
a minute. So there is this minister. Just bear with me, because this minister already exists. Because I never heard about this minister before.
No, this is not an existing portfolio, and it's what I would call a circular definition. The minister means the minister responsible for international interception of communication. That's a circular definition. What I would say is this, and I mean, like you said, we've only met last 24 hours, but I want to say to you, and I want to say to your viewers, I am often very careful in terms of what is fact. I tend not to wade into innuendo, and I tend not to make assumptions. But I will tell you this in answering your question. One of the functions in the legislation that the minister has is that if the commissioner of police goes to the judiciary on the grounds of national security, one of the documents that the commissioner of police must present to the judge is a signed declaration from the minister, this minister here, a signed declaration from the minister confirming that the application is in fact for national security reasons. So let me repeat that. If the commissioner of police goes to the judge, goes to the judiciary with an application for a warrant to intercept communications, and the reason he wants that warrant is for national security purposes, one of the things he has to present as evidence to the judge is a signed declaration from this minister that it is indeed for national security purposes. I made the nexus to say that any minister of government that is going to sign a declaration under national security, one would assume or one would deduce that it must be the Minister of National Security. So if I continue to make the nexus, if this minister has to perform a duty that would normally be under the purview of the Minister of National Security or National Defense, then one could only deduce that this minister could very likely be the minister that has a portfolio of national security.
Well, as you said, we don't know, but you are just you are deducing that from this this document.
Yes,
sir. As somebody says, a very honest and sound presentation by Mr. Corey Greenwich tonight. Very well presented, very balanced, and I love that. And I learned a lot tonight. And trust me, you know me, guys. We're going to and a lot of you out there, we're going to go through this and break it down. Sunday we'll be on this again, going through. And Mr. Greenwich, I want to say that if there's is there any other area that you didn't get to touch on tonight, sir?
There are a lot of other areas within the act that do have deficiencies, and I want to I don't want to overload the
Yes.
citizens, because again, it's 40-something pages of legislation. It's par for the course for me, because I would have spent many years in school and many years in practice. So this is good reading for me, but I don't want us to get too much into the weeds to the extent that our listeners or to the extent that the citizens lose what are the broad strokes of how it affects them. Anytime we speak to our citizens or anytime we speak to the nation, it has to be under the understanding of how it affects them. So yes, there are many other areas within the legislation I think can be corrected, but I want to very much stay with those areas in terms of the guardrails and that backstop. And I'm happy to return to your program at any time, because I believe this issue, I believe this topic, this piece of legislation is so important that I am willing to give of my time and my knowledge such that the people of Barbados can understand what is happening. So I will definitely say on invitation, I am happy to come back and explain and be able to discuss, even if to take questions from your listeners, because many people may have questions that we may not have thought of. And I really want us to come to a place where this is in the minds of the Barbadian people. Thank you for having me tonight. And I'm willing to return again if you need to.
This was, I'm so glad that we finally got to connect. This was, my husband will tell you, I was just agonizing. How are we going to get this done? I wasn't even sure we were going to have a show because we didn't have electricity. They were fixing the poles on the outside. So, you know, we always say our prayers, and we're grateful that you were able to join us tonight. No, we're not going to be able to take any calls tonight, guys. No calls tonight. We're gonna do those calls. I see the call coming in from Canada. We can't take those calls tonight. We're going to take the calls on Sunday. As you can realize, it's 10 o'clock, and it's been a lot of information. Go over homework, folks. Use the notes, use the show, go over the sections again. Make sure you understand them. Do you have questions? And if the parts that you understand, put it up on your social media. Take a picture of it. Put it up on your send it out on WhatsApp. Okay? So put it on Facebook. You know, use your YouTube channel. Those of you at churches, this is good information for you to share with your congregation, because this is all about justice and what's right and righteousness. Right? This is important. And so this is good teaching for church, explaining to the congregation anywhere that people meet. And this is why next weekend on the 16th and 17th, set aside those times. We're going to, before the weekend is up, we'll give you location and times, but we're going to have our march, and then we're going to have a roadside parliament, and we're going to take that throughout Barbados and educate the people of Barbados on what its government is doing to them. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. God bless you, and hopefully we see you, God willing, on Sunday night. God bless you.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, God bless.
Hey! Look at the world through a lens that is brand new. Can you in any way pick out the things you once knew? And do you still hold true faith, chivalry and virtue? Or do you now display 21st century values? When everything seemed like it gets twist wrong, right was right and we knew wrong was wrong. But even that's upside down in this sweet rich song. Yes. And what can we say to children today if they see criminals getting paid to keep the peace mounted? Of course they must stray. But there is no love from one to another. It's all about lust, money, and power. No morality in this twisted society. Well, look at how black men killing each other. And we talking about how Black Lives Matter. Hypocrisy in this twisted society. One group will rob the next group with me. Meanwhile, the whole country in potter reality in this twisted society. In this twisted society. Oh, yeah. It's a twisted society. Hey. Listen, just had to 1, 2 weeks, worst fears have come true. Can you honestly say you happy with things here for true? Just check the land, it's you land. Taxes here will kill you. But if you ain't from out here, taxes don't apply to you. Hear me? One time nationalism was strong, but they just singing a different song. Just like St. Lucie water, things wrong. Been that way too long. Yes. And on the world stage, Barbados flying. But back at home, high cost of living. Got the working class struggling to win. Cause the reward for work don't work any longer. You just get through singing for yourself. Only about here in this twisted society. And patrons are free to discuss any matter, but be careful speaking against me. That's crystal clear in this twisted society. Online you see a man charged for murder. In the comments they say free my nigga. Social decay in this twisted society. In this twisted society. Oh yeah. It's a twisted society. Now what have we come to? Like we really gone through. The music we hear today is one eyeball peeping at you. And hanging they won't do because tint is the issue. So there should be peace out here once your windows they can't see through. While we dying in mini gun tongue, the answers and ministers breaking wrong. The whole place twists around. The forefathers would frown. Yes, the heritage sold to the highest bidder. The African bank not a single dollar. Oh, Mama Africa, Mama Africa. So what do we do to get them to recover? Untwist we mind and work with each other. Starting today in this twisted society. Put down weapons, reason the matter. Lift we self up from out of this collar. Don't shy away in this twisted society. And you see, my church in the comments they say free mind, social decay in this twisted. Let me tell you something. You see, when it comes to social commentary, they always trying to censor me. I know the announcer, he would agree. But some of these Caisonians, you see, they have a twisted mentality. I go explain so you could see. Hear me. Year after year calling discuss me. Now make a switch, blaspheming this area. Lord have mercy in this twisted society. And after Karine condolences over, I hope she don't abuse the judges after, like with Trinity in this twisted society. Last year I forget, and when I laugh at my tonight I almost, but tonight I remember, don't play with me. I don't teach lyrics like AC. I am royalty in this twisted society. Yeah.